In the blistering heat of the Arizona Territory, 1875, where the sun scorched the earth like an unrelenting forge, Eliza Hawthorne stumbled from her rickety wagon, her dress torn and her spirit shattered. She had driven through the night, fleeing the ghosts of a life that had crumbled faster than the red rock cliffs around her. Her husband, Thomas, had been taken by fever just months ago, leaving her alone with a barren homestead and debts that clawed at her like vultures. Now, with her last horse lame and her water skin empty, she collapsed to her knees in the dust, whispering a prayer to a sky that seemed indifferent. "Why me?" she gasped, tears carving clean paths down her dirt-streaked face. Little did she know, in that moment of utter despair, a shadow was watching from the ridge, a shadow that would upend her world with words she never expected. Eliza was no stranger to hardship. Born in the bustling streets of Boston, she had traded the comfort of cobblestone for the promise of the West, lured by Thomas's dreams of gold and open land. But the frontier was a cruel mistress. Their claim yielded nothing but dry soil and broken hopes. After Thomas's death, the townsfolk whispered behind her back, "A widow alone. She won't last the winter." She sold what little she could, packed her meager belongings, and set out for California, where a distant cousin promised work. But the trail was treacherous, riddled with bandits and wild animals. Now, stranded in Apache country, fear gnawed at her insides. Stories of raids and scalps haunted her, tales spun by fearful settlers around campfires. She clutched her late husband's rifle, though her hands trembled too much to load it. As the sun dipped lower, painting the canyons in fiery hues, a figure emerged from the scrub brush. He was tall, his bronzed skin etched with the lines of a life lived under the stars, his dark hair tied back with a leather thong. An Apache warrior, his eyes sharp as eagle's talons, approached slowly, his moccasins silent on the parched ground. Eliza's heart pounded. She raised the rifle, her voice cracking. "Stay back. I don't want trouble." But he stopped at a respectful distance, his hands open and empty. No weapons, no aggression, just a quiet intensity that unnerved her more than shouts ever could. "You are lost," he said in halting English, his voice deep and resonant, like thunder rolling over distant mountains. Eliza blinked, lowering the rifle slightly. She hadn't expected words, let alone ones laced with concern. "Water?" he asked, gesturing to a gourd at his belt. Parched beyond reason, she nodded warily. He tossed it gently, and she drank greedily, the cool liquid a balm to her cracked lips. "Why are you here?" she managed, wiping her mouth. He studied her for a moment, then sat cross-legged on the ground, as if this were a casual meeting by a hearth. "I am Nantan, of the Chiricahua. This is my land. You travel alone?" "No man." The question stung, reopening wounds she thought scabbed over. "My husband died," she replied curtly, averting her eyes. Nantan nodded solemnly, as if he understood the weight of loss all too well. "The Apache no loss. White man's diseases take many. Wars take more." There was no bitterness in his tone, only a shared humanity that surprised her. They talked as the shadows lengthened, halting at first, then with growing ease. He spoke of his people, displaced by miners and soldiers, fighting for scraps of their ancestral home. She shared her own story, the arranged marriage to Thomas, the unfulfilled dreams, the isolation that had hollowed her out. For the first time in months, Eliza felt seen, not pitied. But then came the unexpected turn. As stars began to prick the velvet sky, Nantan stood and looked at her with unwavering gaze. "You need a husband, don't you?" The words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Eliza's cheeks flushed with shock and indignation. "What? How dare you?" she stammered, scrambling to her feet. But he held up a hand, his expression earnest. "Not for me. For protection. The trail ahead is dangerous. Bandits, outlaws, they prey on women alone. Marry me, on paper. White man's law. It will give you strength, a name to ward off threats. When you reach safety, we part. No more. Eliza's mind reeled. This Apache, a man from a world so alien to her own, was offering not conquest, but a shield born of pure selflessness. In her culture, marriage was a bond of love or convenience, but this? It was an act of kindness from a stranger, defying the hatred that simmered between their peoples. She laughed bitterly at first, thinking it a jest, but his eyes held no mockery. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. "Because I see your fire," he replied simply. "It burns like the sun on the desert. Do not let it extinguish." In that profound realization, Eliza saw not an enemy, but a mirror of her own resilience. The Apache weren't the savages painted in newspapers, they were survivors, just like her. They camped that night under the stars, a fragile truce forming. Nantan shared dried meat and stories of his youth, of a time when the land was free and bountiful. Eliza, in turn, spoke of books and cities, worlds he could scarcely imagine. As dawn broke, she agreed to his bold offer, her heart pounding with uncertainty. They rode to a nearby trading post, where a grizzled justice of the peace, wide-eyed at the sight, performed a hasty ceremony. Eliza Hawthorne Lupin, she signed, adopting Nantan's surname as a temporary veil. The paper felt heavy in her hands, a symbol of an alliance forged in the fires of adversity. The journey westward resumed, but now with Nantan by her side. He taught her to read the land, where to find hidden springs, how to spot danger in the wind's whisper. In return, she mended his torn shirt with needle and thread, sharing laughter over her clumsy attempts at Apache phrases. Bonds deepened unexpectedly. One evening, as they huddled by a fire, raiders approached, rough men with guns and greed in their eyes. "Hand over the woman and goods," their leader snarled. But Nantan stepped forward, calm as a mountain. "She is my wife. Touch her, and you face the wrath of the Chiricahua." The marriage paper waved like a flag, and his unyielding stance made them hesitate. Whispers of Apache ferocity did the rest, they slunk away into the night. Eliza's world shifted in those days. She realized the power of humanity wasn't in grand gestures, but in quiet acts of solidarity. Nantan, risking scorn from his own people for aiding a white woman, embodied selflessness. Yet doubt crept in. Was this alliance real, or just a means to an end? As they neared the California border, a storm hit, fierce rains turning the trail to mud. Her wagon bogged down, and in the chaos, Nantan was thrown from his horse, injuring his leg. Eliza tended him through the night, her hands steady now, drawing on strength she didn't know she possessed. "You could leave me," he murmured in pain. "No," she said fiercely. "We're in this together." It was her turn for realization. Kindness begets kindness, weaving thread stronger than any rope. As the sun rose on a sodden landscape, Eliza and Nantan pressed on, his limp a constant reminder of the fragility of life. The marriage, meant as a mere facade, had blossomed into something profound, a partnership that transcended cultures and prejudices. California loomed on the horizon, promising a new start, but Eliza felt a pang at the thought of parting. "What will you do after?" she asked one afternoon, as they rested by a bubbling stream. Nantan gazed at the water, his face etched with quiet resolve. "Return to my people. Fight for our lands. But you will thrive." His words carried a generosity that humbled her, a man giving without expectation of return. The unexpected turn came in the form of a letter, delivered by a passing rider at a way station. Eliza's cousin had written, the promised job was gone, claimed by another. Despair threatened to engulf her again, but Nantan, reading her stricken face, offered more than words. "Stay with me," he said softly. "Not as wife in name, but as equal. My village needs healers, teachers. You have knowledge from your world." The proposal stunned her anew, this time, not bold in audacity, but in its vulnerability. An Apache inviting a white woman into his fold. It defied everything she knew. Yet in that moment, she saw the power of humanity, borders drawn by men meant nothing to hearts aligned in compassion. They detoured south, toward the hidden canyons where Nanton's band dwelled. The journey tested them further. Soldiers patrolled the trails, enforcing treaties that stole more than they gave. Once, they hid in a cave as a patrol passed, Nanton's hand over hers in silent reassurance. "Fear not," he whispered. "We are stronger together." Eliza's profound realization crystallized there. Selflessness wasn't sacrifice, it was the bridge that connected souls. She, who had arrived broken and alone, now felt whole, empowered by this unlikely alliance. Arrival at the village built toward the emotional climax. Nanton's people eyed her warily, whispers of "White Witch" rippling through the wiki-ups. But Nantan stood tall, declaring her his wife in truth, vouching for her with stories of her bravery. An elder, wise and weathered, challenged them, a trial of trust. Eliza must aid in healing a sick child, using her knowledge blended with Apache ways. The boy, feverish from a wound, lay pale under blankets. Drawing on half-remembered remedies from Boston apothecaries and Nanton's guidance on herbal poultices, she worked through the night. As dawn broke, the fever broke too. The child's mother, tears streaming, embraced Eliza. "You saved my son," she said in broken English. In that act of compassion, barriers crumbled. The village accepted her, not as outsider, but as kin. Generosity rippled outward. Eliza taught reading and writing, sharing seeds from her wagon to improve crops. In return, she learned Apache songs, dances that celebrated the earth's bounty. Nantan and she grew closer, their bond evolving from protection to love, a quiet, enduring flame. One evening, under a canopy of stars, he confessed, "I offered marriage to save you, but you saved me. From hatred, from loneliness." Eliza, tears in her eyes, replied, "We saved each other." The climax peaked in a communal feast, where elders blessed their union, symbolizing hope amid turmoil. Years passed in a blur of shared joys and trials. Eliza became a bridge between worlds, advocating for peace in a time of war. Her story spread through letters to the East, inspiring others to see beyond divides. When conflict arose, her voice, tempered by kindness, helped negotiate truces, saving lives on both sides. Nantan, once a lone warrior, found purpose in family, their children embodying the fusion of cultures. In the end, as Eliza sat on a porch overlooking the canyons, gray in her hair but fire in her spirit, she reflected on that fateful day. A bold offer from an Apache had changed her life forever, proving that humanity's greatest power lies in selflessness. No matter the divides of race, creed, or circumstance, an act of kindness can transform despair into hope. And in a world often fractured, that simple truth inspires us all to reach out, to connect, and to heal.